everyone. Hopefully you guys have all come back. We're about to get started. So welcome everyone to day 3 of our meta skills event from Teach Kid. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so today, our panelists today are going to be Isabella, Andy, and Rich. So welcome y'all. So to get into what today is going to be about, today's meta skills event, we're going to be covering research and summer programs, and that's going to be encompassing like essentially how to do research in different fields. Summer programs are also going to be talking a bit about like scholarships, internships, and experiences with those kinds of things. So to give an introduction into what we're talking about, so when we say research, we're talking about gathering information, and usually you're going to try to be solving a problem regarding some kind of topic and gather those findings that you have into some kind of publishable material, usually some kind of paper. And then when we say summer programs, we're referring to camps, scholarships, and or internships that are focused on a specific subject. Now, these experiences are important because you will be able to meet lots of talented, like-minded people and gain these valuable experiences. And oftentimes, these kinds of things allow you to basically, by networking with these kinds of people through summer programs, not only do you have like an increased potential to like share ideas and learn new things, but you can also interact with these people for example, starting an organization or trying to fund some sort of other thing. And some questions that we'll be examining today include what kind of research opportunities best fit high school students? How can I plan a productive summer? And where can I find internships and work experience? So without further ado, let's go ahead and turn it over to our panelists. So, Isabella, would you like to start?
Sure. So summer programs. I don't have like any slides or anything prepared, but since you have like this big block of like 3-month time in between school years, your best that amount of time is best spent not doing nothing at home. I mean, granted, you can get some like good studying done, you can get some good like summer online classes, and there's a lot of options for you to do, but probably the best use of your time would be looking into certain summer programs. Not only are they a great way to learn new things about the various topics that you're interested in, but it also lets you meet new people so that you're not just stuck at home talking to like your cat. And in fact, summer programs were how I met like Rich and Andy in the first place. So yeah, honestly, I think the friends that I met at summer programs were probably closer than the people that I met at school. Generally, research programs in particular are like, they're good, but they're pretty rare. So you don't have to worry about them too much until say you're, so like, I can't think of too many off the top of my head that are before sophomore year. My summer programs were mostly MathWorks at Texas State, the honor summer math camp. And then in my sophomore year, I also attended the Math Olympiad program, which is quite prestigious. And then in my 11th grade year, that was the Research Science Institute. And this summer, I'm going to return to honor summer math camp as a counselor. All of these camps were pretty lengthy and very intense. So yeah, I was arguably working harder than I was during the school year as well. These programs, a lot of summer but there are like a lot of other summer programs that are great besides the ones that I went to. I actually didn't go to like a very large variety. These summer programs, their applications tend to open as early as January, but sometimes as late as like March or April. So some of them will have like mailing lists. Oh, hi, Stephanie. Some of them will have like mailing lists or a website that you can check every now and then, so that you know when the application is opened. And these applications they're good to practice for like college applications in like essays or getting or practicing just asking teachers for recommendations, as well as just knowing like the kinds of things that a program or a group of admissions officers will like evaluate you on. So then after you get accepted into the camp, then you have something to look forward to over the summer, and you get to learn some great material and meet some awesome people. And not just meeting cool people as friends, you also make some really good connections that could help you later in life. I'm not sure how much else I have to say beyond that, so I'll just pass it on to whoever Sage deems shall go next.
Great, thanks so much, Isabella, for your insight. Andy, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'll just talk about research pretty much. I also went to the same camp, HSMC, or Honor Summer Math Camp, which is 6 weeks long. And each year you go up a level or a year. So in the second and third year, you start doing research, and this is a more structured environment where you're put in a group and you have a professor who kind of like leads your group to do a certain topic. And at the end, you try like producing a paper, even though this paper doesn't have to be published. And oftentimes like this work and the professor, this group and the professor will like work past the camp. So research doesn't have to only happen during the camp. You can definitely do this throughout the school year too. So some examples of research institutes that you may have heard of are RSI, the first one, MIT Primes, which is throughout the school year, SSP, Summer Science Program, and the Clark Scholars Program, which is at, I think, Texas Tech. So they're typically like 5+ weeks. If you do have to travel, for example, sometimes like these camps will let you join a bit late. Oftentimes like you can still meet with your group or meet with your professor like online. So scheduling is a bit tricky with these more structured programs, but it still should be possible. Typically you have to meet certain deadlines more rigorously, so that might be a downside if you're like really interested in just exploring a topic for the sake of exploring it. So if that's the case, you could like consider less structured or even unstructured research settings. So I think the main like way that people do less structured research is like just contacting a professor, like either through email, phone, or through connections, and then asking them if they're like willing to provide a research experience. I know some of my friends who did this, and they would ask like maybe family friends who are professors. And that way, like if the professor, for example, has some topic that they want, that they think is appropriate, like difficulty wise, but also might be interesting to solve with like someone else, they might give that opportunity to the high school student. It does require a bit more initiative because you have to go out and seek professors, and oftentimes you might like ask 10 professors and only, or maybe none of them respond with yes. So it requires a lot of perseverance. But the good thing is you have more autonomy with this, and you don't really have like clear deadlines besides certain competitions that you might want to submit your final research product to, or like certain conferences that you want to try attending. There's also, I guess, unstructured research, which is really just you exploring a topic for your own sake, and maybe going to these like competitions or fairs. So oh, sorry. Okay, that part, it's not done, but you can do it with friends or by yourself. Really, there's not much past this besides just like reading materials that you find online, coming up with a good question, and then just writing out a paper. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Andy. That was some really great advice. Stephanie, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I know I didn't really have the opportunity to introduce myself earlier, but give me 1 second. Okay, so I just prepared a few slides. So before I begin, I'm Stephanie. I'm currently a I just recently graduated high school, and in the fall, I'm going to be attending Harvard to study molecular biology. Some of my research experience in the past included attending RSI and also doing research at Honor Summer Math Camp, and then also several like independent projects. My research focus is mostly in like computational biology and just various medicine related things as well. So just starting off with what is research. So I think this can be confused a bit. Usually students think that research is just like reading some papers or maybe like learning in depth about a subject, but usually a good research project involves you coming up with something new or you creating something that hasn't been created before in the past. So some examples of these could be identifying a new cancer pathway. That's like a very common bioinformatics sort of project, creating a new algorithm for data compression, and or creating like a new device for heart monitoring. So these are all examples of good research projects that I've seen in the past. And so the basic idea is that you are using your scientific knowledge to take action by building up existing technology, or you're coming up with something new. And it's usually a very powerful extracurricular to have for high school students. So a lot of the times it can be hard to find research opportunities, but basically the steps, especially for like more biology related research, is to find your field of interest. So that could be like in biology, chemistry, physics, math, etc., and determining what type of project you want to do. So are you going to be doing like wet lab, especially bio related? Do you want to like work with a established lab where they have different biotechnology devices and live samples and stuff, or do you want to just do more data oriented research where you can do it from the comfort of your home? And so if you need to do the first one, if you're more interested in wet lab, then you would have to do some outreach to like local universities, local professors who do have access to those labs, and cold email, or sometimes you can apply to different programs that connect you to these labs in person, or you can ask around to see if there any of your connections know anyone who could potentially take you on in these in-person labs. So these are usually for projects where you're actually going to be like doing like lab experimentation. But if you're not doing that, you can do your own outreach to your mentors. So for example, you could just do cold emailing, you could apply to different programs, or you can, as usual, you can like just figure out, do your own research as well, just by reading papers and stuff. So that's a little bit more flexible on how you approach that. But basically you want to figure out what the resources you need to use are. And then after you figure that out, there are a few ways that you can find research opportunities. So some of the research programs that are pretty well known are usually summer programs. So in the very selective category, I included a few that are pretty famous. So RSI, which is Research Science Institute, Summer Science Program, or SSP, Clark Scholars, Simon Summer Research Program. These are all really well known, but they're pretty selective and usually require some prior research experience to get in. And then there are like the moderately selective programs, like the Garcia Summer Scholars Program, Welch Scholars, and Rockefeller. So these are not as selective as the first few, but they're still really good experiences for a person to have. And then others, you can look in your local area. So sometimes local universities will offer research programs for high school students. So some examples are like the Army Educational Outreach Program research internships. I know there's one offered by UT. So just looking for local opportunities, you can usually just do this with a simple Google search. Or if you don't want to apply to research programs, or you feel like you want to get some more experience first before applying to research programs, you can also do your own outreach. So an example would be to find local labs if you're looking to do more wet lab research. So you can reach out to like local universities. So here where I live, I know a lot of my friends do research at like University of Houston. If you live in Austin, you can look for opportunities at UT Austin, etc. And then you find professors in these schools who match your interests. So like usually on these websites, there will be a description of what they like to, what type of topics they study. And you can just reach out to the ones who align with your interests. And then I think probably the most important step is to create a concise email template. And you don't want to make it too long. I think that's like the number one downfall of most students who do cold emailing is they make it too long. They make it too like blabbery. So you want to just include an intro, your field of interest, why their lab appeals to you, ask if you could potentially work with them, and it's optional, but you can also attach your resume. And usually you want to send quite a few because the response rate isn't typically super high for these. So and then you want to follow up to get an internship if the professor responds to you. So that's like the basic sort of step-by-step like process of finding research opportunities. And usually if you take advantage of these research opportunities, you can really get a good research project. And that leads me to my last slide, which is about what to do after you have a research project. So there are a few options. You can compete at science fairs, which tends to be a pretty popular option among high school students. So the most famous one is Isaf. This one, though, requires different advancement levels. So you start at a regional fair, and then you go to your state fair, and then you go to ISEF. Sometimes there's no state fair. You just can go straight to ISEF through a regional fair. So it just depends on where you're from. Or you can do other science research competitions. So I know there's one called the Toshiba Explorer Vision. There's the Google Science Fair. And then there's one for seniors called Regeneron Science Talent Search. So you can also submit your research to these various competitions. If you don't like science fairs, or if you feel like you want to do something that's beyond high school, at the high school level, you can either present at a conference or you can submit it to a journal. So usually you can just find conferences by Googling them and Googling conferences in that area that you want to do them in, and then they'll pop up. And usually you just follow their instructions on how to submit your project to the conference, and they'll either accept or decline your paper. And then if you get accepted, then you get to present at the conference. And these are very great opportunities for you to network and also practice your presentation skills and get a publication as well. And sometimes if your research is very promising, you could consider submitting it to a journal. However, these are usually like the most prestigious journals are pretty hard to get into, but I think they're worth a shot if you're interested in going that route as well. And so yeah, usually you can ask for help from your mentor on how to do that. So yeah, that was it for my slides. And let me know if you have any questions. Let me check the Q&A. So someone asked, what if you're going to travel in the summer? Well, sometimes you just have to look at like when the time frame of the program that you want to do is. If it overlaps with your travel time, then it might not work out. Or sometimes you want to just plan your travels around like your program. So hopefully that can let you do both. And then how to find research. I'm assuming you mean like research opportunities. That, like I just talked about, would be you either apply to a program or you do your own outreach to different universities, different professors, etc. And hopefully like you get an opportunity that way.
Great. Thanks so much, Stephanie. There was definitely some really great points there. Rich, would you like to go ahead and present next?
Yes, okay. I also have a few slides, so let me quickly share my screen. So there are a few things that I want to quickly say. So before I quickly get on to like some of my slides, so for me, I think that research is a lot like, so I'm pretty sure most people have done like some sort of science fair when they were younger. And I think that research is, you can just think of it sort of as doing these science fair projects, except on a much larger scale. For example, you might have spent like a week or 2 weeks doing your science fair project, looking into a certain topic and different things about it. Whereas doing research is going to be looking into this same topic, but most likely over the course of months and possibly years, depending on how intense you want your research to be. So yeah, it's sort of like you find something that you're interested in, and then you really narrow down and try to find a way to publish something, find some results that might be publishable about it. So the first thing that I guess I'll talk briefly on, because I feel like a lot of people, the other panelists have already addressed this, but there are a few ways that one can find research opportunities. And in my opinion, these three are to cold email or cold call college professors, look into various summer programs, or ask school teachers. So most of the time, it's quite unlikely that there's, for example, a high school teacher will be willing to like sponsor a project. But if you know that one of them is interested, or if you feel like you should ask them because they would be like interested in doing this, then you should definitely do this, because this is probably the most convenient way, considering that you literally go to this school. So you would be able to very easily access your mentor. Whereas cold calling or cold emailing college professors most of the time will just lead to online meetings. And also, if you ask your school teacher and you're doing like a sort of research project that requires a lab, then you could use the school labs and possibly. So this is just one possibility. As for cold emailing or cold calling college professors, I think the main thing that you just need to do is to, first of all, it can be sort of scary cold emailing or cold calling these professors, especially if you don't think that they're going to respond. But the thing that you need to understand is like these college professors, like they're oftentimes really busy. So just because they don't respond doesn't mean that they don't believe that you're unqualified or anything like that. And most of the time, as long as you are like persistent in your cold emailing and cold calling, eventually you'll find a few professors that might be interested. And from there, you can hopefully get a research opportunity. So like, don't be afraid to just emailing like tens of professors, like lots of professors, as many as you want until one of them might be interested in doing a research program with you. And the last thing is looking into various summer programs. I think that like Isabella, Andy, and Stephanie have addressed this quite a lot already, so I won't talk too much about this. But just know that if you're interested in going to some sort of summer program, you can always look online. And yeah, I think most of what I wanted to say has already been mentioned, so I won't spend too long talking about this. One other thing that I want to quickly talk about is what the experience of conducting research feels like, because I feel like this has not been touched on too much. But in my opinion, one of the most important things for conducting like meaningful research is to make sure that the topic is something that you're interested in. And I feel like sometimes this isn't emphasized enough, because in my experience, like because you're doing research over such a long period of time, like you're probably going to be doing it over many, many months, maybe even years. Like, so as a result, if the topic is something that you don't really care that much about, then it's going to be very hard to motivate yourself to be able to spend those hours each week grinding out, like trying to find something about this problem, trying to work in the lab if that's what your research involves, over and over again over the course of a long period of time. And this isn't to say that, for example, if you finally found a professor that's interested in working with you, that if they offer you a topic and it's something that isn't perhaps your favorite subject, then you just straight out reject them. But what I'm saying is perhaps like if you find a professor willing to work with you and they offer you a possible research topic, perhaps you want to see all the possible options that you have available to you before you start doing the project, and you want to pick the project that perhaps is most interesting to you. Because, you know, if you absolutely despise looking at stem cells and you start doing research over stem cells, then it's not very likely that you're going to find very, very many things that are interesting about it if you don't think they're interesting. Something else is that you need to set up clear meeting times with your mentor. And okay, so this is more of a personal thing, and I'm sure that a lot of other people have maybe better experiences where they can like successfully motivate themselves to work. They can set their own deadlines and things like this. But in my opinion, having clear meeting times with your mentor like weekly or bi-weekly is quite important, because not only is it an accountability tool for yourself that allows you to actually like work on the project and complete things so that you don't like make a fool of yourself when you're talking with your mentor, but it also sort of makes sure that you're constantly talking with your mentor and your mentor can constantly advise you about what's going on. Because if you're doing research, and especially if it's your first time, it's quite likely that you're probably not super knowledgeable about how to write a paper, what to do once you find results, what to do if you feel like you're really stuck, which can oftentimes happen a lot. And your mentor is sort of just like somebody who can provide a lot of guidance and expertise in the field that you're researching. So meeting with them often is definitely going to help. And the last thing that I want to quickly touch on is you need to hold yourself accountable to the deadlines that you have set. So, the deadlines that you have set for yourself. So, for example, like, I'm trying to say is that like, if you have some sort of thing that you want to complete, you don't want to be procrastinating and constantly pushing back this deadline. Like, if you want to say, okay, I want to have this portion of the paper written by the next week, then you want to be able to complete this, because especially with research, which is something that oftentimes does not have strict deadlines, it can be very easy to sort of float and just let a project drift on and on until it just doesn't end up happening. So if you constantly hold yourself accountable to deadlines that you have set, then it is much easier to sort of like just complete the project in general, which is something that you definitely want to happen. I see somebody has asked, how do we obtain a mentor? So a mentor is just sort of somebody who like oversees the project. And as I think some of our previous panelists mentioned, most of the time when you're conducting research, you want to have some sort of mentor who offers some sort of project to you. I think Stephanie mentioned that you could like so one way to do this is you can cold email or cold call college professors to see if they would be interested in mentoring you. And if you go to a summer program where you will conduct research, I believe that the summer program will always find someone to sort of oversee your research. So this would be your mentor. So pretty much all of the time, research will be done with some sort of mentor to help you. And then I guess just one more thing, where I'll briefly touch on summer programs in general. So summer programs, that's, at least in my experience, the summer programs that have been the best experiences have been the ones that you need to apply for. And what this means is that the summer programs, you can just go and pay like $8,000 to go to the summer program, probably won't be as good as those that actually like screen their applicants. So this is something to keep in mind. And you need something else that I want to say is you should research programs that you think might be of interest to you. And just because something is the first thing that you hear of doesn't always mean that it's necessarily the best. Because there are a lot of programs out there. Like for me, I'm a math person. And when I was in ninth grade, I definitely was not aware of all of the possible math programs out there that I could go to. So you should probably go online and just type out math programs and see which one you think would be the best fit for you. And the last thing I want to point out is that many programs provide need-based financial aid. So if you're somebody who feels like they don't want to go to a certain program because they feel like it'd be too expensive, I think it's safe to say that most or a lot of summer programs are going to offer need-based financial aid. So if you can't find something that talks about this on their website where they talk about giving away money so that you can attend their summer program, then you should definitely give them a call and see what their policy is on need-based financial aid, because they know that oftentimes the prices that they charge aren't going to be affordable by everyone. So if you're somebody who needs like this need-based aid, then you should definitely call them and see if they have anything that's, you can sort of leverage. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say for now.
Great. Thanks so much, Rich. That was definitely really insightful. So now that all of our panelists have presented, we want to just completely open it up to you guys to ask questions, either in the chat or the Q&A. And our panelists will provide you with hopefully helpful answers to any sort of like problems or challenges you may be facing.
So somebody has asked, what is cold calling / emailing? So this is just when you contact the professor without having known them in the first place. So for example, maybe I find a professor online and I see that he's doing some sort of lab, then I can just look up his email and then I just directly email him, even though I haven't actually met him and he's never actually talked to me and we don't know anything about each other. So this can be a bit stressful because you don't know them directly, but this is definitely one way to sort of get a research opportunity, especially if you do it with a lot of professors.
So I see a lot, also some questions about like taking summer courses, and how they like interact with like summer programs. I actually have done like a handful of these. I took microeconomics, world history, and US history I took during the school year, and government over the summer. And all of those were concurrent with summer programs. So I can talk a little bit about how that went, and then like my fellow panelists can chime in if they have differing experiences. For me, the summer programs that I went to did give like ample time, like outside of whatever we were doing, to work on other things, and I spent some of that time working on those like online classes. They don't tend to be super work heavy anyhow, so I didn't get too stressed out by it. World history, I ended up like migrating to like an online world history. I ended up just like starting to self-study it because I had issues with the actual class I was taking, because I did not want to write an essay every 2 weeks about random world history. So which worked out fine. I was just reading a textbook like every so often, and like it worked out fine. For the others, I just did like the normal online course things and managed to like get all of those done. In general, you'll find that you have enough time to do those. Just don't like take like 5 at the same time and you'll probably be okay. I did world history in the summer before my 9th grade year. No, in the summer before my 10th grade year. And I don't think I did any online courses in between 10th and 11th. No, I did microeconomics during then, which was like really easy because it was over COVID summer, so I didn't have that much going on. And then before my senior year, I did government, which was also not terrible. It was mostly just textbook reading. So yeah, the online classes are not terribly stressful, so don't worry too much about those.
Yeah. I don't know. Personally, I never took any online courses through the summer, but I don't know. That was just me. I felt like there were other things that like I felt were more interesting than taking online courses, but I know that this is definitely different from person to person.
For me, I took one class over the summer, and this happens to be the year where like you could take it asynchronously, so you don't have to attend class. I know most of these classes won't be like that, but I do think there's like a trade-off, and at a certain point, you might want to consider, like if you have a lot of APs, it might be better to divert some of that time away to like a summer camp, because these are generally I think a bit like bigger and more important than like one AP class, for example. So AP courses you can also consider self-studying throughout the year. I know with research it's sometimes hard to like continue it during a year because you have a lot more things to be stressed out over. So if you have like a continuous block of time or like more free time during the summer to work on research, then maybe for some people that would work better than having like a lot of AP classes going on at the same time. So it really depends on the person.
And I just wanted to add that sometimes you can do both. Like I know there are some programs that are a lot less intensive than others. For example, like I went to HSMC one summer and I actually was able to simultaneously take an online course. But for RSI, definitely do not have time for that. So you just want to figure out whether or not you can, like, you can do something alongside your research project.
See that somebody else has asked, what year of high school do you usually start a research program? I think that this definitely just depends for person to person. Like in particular, doing a research project on something generally requires you to like have some sort of background knowledge on this topic. So if there's something that you want to conduct research over, you generally just want to make sure that you have some fundamental knowledge in this topic, and then you can just start sort of doing it. I wouldn't necessarily say that there's some age requirement for when you need to do it or when you should be doing it. As long as you believe that you have what you need to know, then it should be good. Like, I guess for me, I think I started doing it at HSMC in 10th grade, I believe. And then I've also known people who start doing this in like 9th grade or earlier though. So there's definitely, yeah. And even other people have done it older, like 11th grade. So it all depends person to person.
I see some questions just about general summer plans. One person asked about taking college courses, someone else asked about working. It really just depends on your preferences and like what things you enjoy doing most. As for myself, I always felt like I spent most of my summers throughout high school either working on like a project or doing research. So it just depends on what you feel like is most important to your own development. I know some of my friends also like opted just to take classes during all of their summers, so that's also an approach. But I think if you're someone who's really interested in doing research or doing a project, really, I think probably the best time to focus on that is over the summer, since you do have all that uninterrupted free time over the summer and you have that concentrated time to really produce a high quality project. So it's just, in my opinion, that if you really want to like pursue research, probably the best time to do that would be over the summer.
Yeah, like my experience is that, well, personally, I never took any online courses, but this is because I wanted to sort of focus on like learning higher level math and stuff. And I found that to be, at least for me personally, I found it to be useful because I could apply a lot of it into the research projects that I started, mainly in like 10th and 11th grade. So just personal experience.
I also see another question about an example of being friendly when cold emailing. I think just being polite, like for example, say just not being too pushy with your requests. You can be respectful of their time. You can just come off as very courteous. All you have to do is just be nice, be like polite, and that's pretty much it. There's not really like a set like wording template or anything to use when you're doing cold emailing. It's just normally how would you talk to someone who is an authority figure, and just put that in an email. It's like, and you just do want you do want to be concise. I think that's probably my biggest tip. When cold emailing, you don't want to ramble too much about your own accomplishments, because as a high school student, usually you're not going to be as impressive as some of their graduate or undergraduate students. So it's not really necessary, in my opinion, to be like talking about all of your achievements in your email. You just want to come off as very interested, very passionate about their research, and just come off as polite and respectful of their time. And that's pretty much all there is. And usually I would recommend keeping your cold email below three or less paragraphs, with like around 2 or 3 sentences per paragraph, because you don't want to overwhelm them as well. But you do want to be like concise and specific about what you want from them.
Wait, I want to quickly add something. So again, this is like, again, my personal opinion, but I feel like you can say something, just be like, hi, you just sort of state what you want to do. For example, if they have some sort of project that they're working on that you feel like you might be interested in, you could just be like, I noticed that you're working on this project. So I was wondering if we could like schedule a meeting to talk about it or something like that. And then if you really want, you can also perhaps attach your resume at the end. Although as Stephanie said, it's important that your email is concise, because college professors have a lot to do and they probably won't read anything if it's super long, because they'll just be like, oh, it's a waste of my time.
So someone also asked, do you blind carbon copy all professors in one email or send each one separately? I think it's probably best to send them all separately, just so you can address them by name, like dear professor so and so, and you can tailor it to each specific professor. Because if a professor just receives an email that says, hi, I'm XYZ, I want to do research in your lab, that's kind of like not very personal, and that can come off a little bit like just like very standard and bland. So I think it's a good idea to write a tailored email for each professor. You don't need to change that much about it. Just change their name, change like the research topic that they're doing, and maybe it'll be a good idea to include like a sentence or two about why you're interested in their research as well. So that would just be my suggestion for that.
Also, it's like really painfully obvious if you're doing that, because it's like BCC me. Like it's very clear that you're like one of many, so like you probably won't. So not optimal.
I see a question about whether or not research programs are in person or if they're online. My impression is that they're pretty much all online now, and if they do, sorry, they're pretty much not online anymore. That's just a COVID thing, and they're all in person, and they're usually held at a college campus, so you have like a place to stay. So if you have other forms of research, if you're doing it with like a professor, maybe that can, or just like through, if you got to the professor by cold emailing them, then maybe that can be online, and that might be easier. And of course, like after the research program ends, you might consider like taking everything online so that you can still work on it with your mentor.
Yeah, wait, that being said, I do want to add that there are some research programs that still are online. Like, for example, if the research program advertises themselves as in person, it's pretty unlikely that they're going to let you just do it online while every other attendee is doing it in person. But for example, for programs like MIT Primes, this program always does its research online. So there are definitely both in-person and online programs, although most of like the in-person programs, most of the in-person programs have likely shifted back to in-person now. So it's likely that, yeah. And somebody else has asked, why are research projects important? So research projects are just a good way to show that you're really interested about a topic, because you can sort of think of these as public, because these are sort of results that you're publishing for the world of like X community to know. So for example, if you're doing a research paper in biology over stem cells and you publish a paper over stem cells, then this is some sort of contribution. This is a way of showing that, hey, look, I'm really interested in biology, and this publication proves that I'm actually like actively contributing to the biology community. And as a result, it shows that I'm really passionate about this topic, and I'm somebody who like might push biology further in the future, and I will study biology, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a good way to sort of just show that you're really interested in something, and that despite being a high school student and having to do things in school, you're already trying to, I guess, contribute to like whatever field you're working the project in.
Someone asked, in order to get into Isaf, how early do you need to start? Is 11th grade too late? I actually know a lot of students who got into like did their regional science fair, started doing science fair relatively late in high school, like in their junior or senior years of high school. So it's definitely not too late if you're in 11th grade. There's not really like a requirement for how like you have to be below a certain age or anything. So as long as you have an effective project, then you have a chance at going to ISAF.
Something else is that I think if I remember correctly, like because ISAF, to get into ISAF first, you have to like go through the local and regional fairs first. Know that like the local and regional fairs will likely have different due dates. I don't think they're all at the same time. I could be misremembering though. But because of this, just make sure that you're aware of like your local region's deadlines so that you don't like accidentally miss these.
I see a few questions about like getting a job versus like doing research. That just depends on your own personal preferences. It just depends on how you enjoy spending your time and what you feel like is most important to you. If you're more interested in doing research, then I would just suggest do your research project. But if you feel like that's not something that interests you as much as maybe like getting real world job experience, then just do that. So it really just depends on what you feel like is most important to you, and it's definitely a case by case basis. I know a lot of people who opt for one over the other just depending on their circumstances, so it's really hard to tell like without knowing your unique circumstances.
Steph, you're muted. Wait, oh.
So somebody else has asked, is ISAF for both team and individual projects? And the answer to this is yes, you can participate in ISAF either individually or with a team. Although if you do it with a group of people, this group of people has to be less than or equal to 3. So if you have a group of 4, if you did research with a group of 4, then you will not be able to participate.
So I see another question just about like ISAF, I think. For ISAF, you first have to find your local ISAF affiliated fair. So where I live, it would be like the Science and Engineering Fair of Houston. You can also go through your state fair, I believe. You just have to check with your own unique regions. And then if you do well in your local fair, then you'll get promoted, then you'll be invited to go to ISAF. And ISAF is basically just a fair where people from across the world congregate, and then you just compete at an international level, and judges, the same way as normal fairs, you present, you get ranked, and you get prizes basically.
Wait, Steph, I think something else that they might be asking about is like, what do you need? Like, do you need to submit a paper? Do you need to submit like a notebook, scientific notebook?
Oh, from my understanding, you have to have a poster. I'm not sure about like whether or not you need a whole paper, but I know with Houston, you only need to submit like an abstract. You also have to have like talk a little bit about your methods and stuff. So just check with your local fair, but I think you do need to have a poster though for ISAF. So you just have a poster where you like present all your findings.
there's a question asking about like how early do you have to prepare in order to get into high profile summer programs like SSP? And I mean, I guess in general, the rule of thumb is just if you've started preparing earlier, then in general, this is just going to help you more because you've prepared for more time. So if, for example, you really, really want to get into SSP or some other research program, and this is really your goal, then you can start working towards doing research as soon as you really want to. Like, for example, perhaps as soon as you enter high school, if you really want to do an SSP, then you can start working towards research and building some sort of profile so that you can have a better shot of getting into these programs. And I think that's just, yeah.
So I saw someone had a question about HSMC in particular. HSMC is math oriented, so it's oriented towards both pure and applied math research. And it's basically like a multi-year program. The first year that you attend, you don't do any research. You just take a course in number theory and some other like side classes, and then you just learn and do proofs. And then second year and third year, those are the years that you actually work on a research project with a mentor from Texas State University. And but it's like group based, so it's usually in groups of 3 or 4, and then you finish that project over the summer, or you continue working on it over the school year, and you can submit that to various competitions or potentially get it published. How selective is it? I'm not too certain about like the acceptance rate, but it's like decently.
I believe it's 20%.
I think 20, around there. So it's not as selective as some of the programs like SSP or RSI, but it's definitely a really good program especially to get started in.
Something I will say is that the application for HSMC consists of a personal statement, a teacher recommendation, and also just some the standard information about yourself. And I think this is what it requires from remember. Like it's just a personal statement and a teacher recommendation. So it's not too time consuming to apply to. And then somebody is asking, oh, sorry, Andy, no, you go. No,
Okay, I was just gonna say like another thing about like the more local research programs, like they don't expect you to necessarily have a lot of research experience. So don't worry about having to have done research before you go to this camp. Like HSMC, you can, once you apply as a first year, like you don't have to have research experience, of course, to apply as a first year. And after that, you're likely to be asked to come back, or likely to be like selected as a second year and onwards. These local ones like won't be as selective as like the more prestigious ones, the ones with bigger names, and they might require you to have like more competition experience or simply research experience. So
yeah, I think Andy brings up a good point. Like I know that there's this comp sci research program at UTD, or University of Texas Dallas, and I know that a couple of my friends went to this UTD research program for computer science despite not having any prior research experience. So especially the local programs are going to be like, you don't need to have any research experience to get into most of these. So these are a good way to get started.
I see a question about Isaf eligibility. Okay, I believe this is what it is. You just have to be in high school and you have to submit a project either individually or in a team of 1, 2, or 3, or team of 2 or 3. And you have to be part of participate in an ISAF affiliated local fair. And I think that's it. And then also there does come some rules when it comes to if you did live animal related experiments. I think there are some rules with that, but just check with the ISAF rules. They're online, you can easily find them, and it should outline all the eligibility. I don't think there's any major exclusionary criteria for ISAF participation. It's mostly just you have to do well in a local fair.
Actually, I think one other thing is that you cannot be 20 years old by the time that you're doing ISAF, but I don't think it's very likely that you're going to be in 12th grade and also 20 years old. So you probably don't have to worry about this.
Super senior.
How does ISAF differ from school competitions? This generally just differs from school competitions because like this, a school competition is generally going to be the local level of a science fair, whereas an event like Isaf is generally going to span across like internationally, which is why it's called the International Sciences. Yeah, it's just sort of the scope of who is participating in this fair. But in general, the project that you're presenting is probably going to be the same. Like, for example, if you present a project at the local level, you'll probably be presenting the same project at like ISAP if you end up qualifying for the competition.
I also see another question about internships versus research over the summer. So sometimes by internship, I think you mean like maybe interning with a company or something. Sometimes, especially computer science students usually do internships over the summer. These usually entail you working and building something for a company or working to build something for a particular like lab. You're not necessarily doing like original research, like an original cohesive research project that you can submit to various competitions. So it depends on what you want to do. However, internships do really offer you a lot of good real world sort of career investigation and into what it's like to be someone working in that industry in the future. So it just depends on what you're looking for over the summer. If you're looking for doing an actual research project, it would probably be a better idea to just seek out a research project or seek out a research position and work on your own project. Whereas if you're more interested in seeing what it's like to work in the real world, an internship might be a better opportunity for you. Oh, and I also see another question in the chat specifically about pre-med students or like medical opportunities. So I definitely did take advantage of a lot of like biology, medicine, research related opportunities. I would say there are some specifically for like biology research, and that's like and usually they're more local oriented. So I know where I live, there are various opportunities at the Baylor Medical School in Houston. So I think especially if you're starting off, just looking for local universities to see if they offer any like biology research. I know there's also one in the Jackson lab in Maine that's specifically targeted towards bio research. There's also one, I'm not sure if they still run it, but I know that Stanford used to offer one. So I think just Googling is a good opportunity, is a good way to find these opportunities. Just looking for biology or medicine related internships, or you can just reach out to labs at your local university where the professor works on some medicine related project.
There's a question asking about like, what is your opinion on getting a part-time job in the summer to gain work experience? It depends on like what you're doing this job for, I think. Like in particular, if you're working at this job and you expect it, like as long as if you're doing this sort of for college, I guess, as long as it relates to what you're very interested in, and colleges can also see the depth of the job, then it should be fun. I mean, I don't know, that's my personal opinion. I don't know if I can comment too much on this though, because I do not have any experience with having a part-time job over the summer.
I see a question about humanities summer programs. I didn't really do many like humanities summer programs, but I have looked into a few. I know like TASP is a good one. It's TASP, but it's very selective. And then there are also like various writing programs out there if that's what you're interested in. So I know there's one called the Iowa Young Writers Studio. There are also various like public policy related programs that allow you to maybe work on campaigns or work on like policy research if that's what you're interested in. I think a good way to just find any sort of opportunity, especially summer program, is just Googling blank summer program, or like you can do like humanities summer program and a list should pop up, especially local ones that suit you as well.
Okay, so unfortunately, that's about all the time we have. But before we end, really quickly, I just have a few reminders for you guys. So, in case that you have a question later or your question didn't get a chance to get answered today, you can always submit additional questions using this link, kteachkid.org/class questions, and just fill in the information on that website, and it'll send us a message, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. And also, in case you missed any of these previous classes or you want to come back and look at any of the recordings from our program this year, all of those resources are available at kteachkid.org/2022 summer camp resources. So yeah, besides that, thank you guys all so much for coming, and thank you to our amazing panelists. And please join us again tomorrow for our competition session.
Everyone.
Bye, guys.